Welcome to the Trailblazers. I'm your host, Perry Rarick. The purpose of the Trailblazers is to share with you interesting and thought-provoking discussions I have with trailblazing business leaders. My guests are innovative, they're experts at what they do, and they're not afraid to challenge the status quo. My returning Trailblazer guest today is Christine Slocumb. She helps healthcare and life sciences innovators and many others do so many more things, and she helps them in so many ways. Over the past 25 years, she built marketing strategies for companies from startups all the way to enterprise, and she founded Clarity Quest Marketing, which she sold back in 2023 to a private equity firm. She is the author of Stop Starvation Marketing, 23 Power Growth Moves. I love that title. I highly recommend her book. I have a copy of her book right here. It's still for sale. She's going to tell us later how you can find this. Chris, it's never more than an arm's length away. It's really one of my favorite. It's a great reference guide. I love the 23 Power Moves. She now channels her experience into helping companies achieve the same success that she earned. She serves as a strategic growth consultant, just a general common sense consultant to other businesses, and she's an exit advisor for healthcare, biotech, and tech companies. This is her passion now. She believes that women founders and their companies are not achieving their full potential and not capturing their full exit value. And she does all of this through an organization called the Whisper Group. She is one of the finest business minds that I know, and she joins us today. Chris, welcome back to the Trailblazers.
Thank you, Perry. Thank you for such a warm welcome. And I'm humbled and so happy to be back with you today. I so enjoyed our first conversation and hope your audience did as well.
I did, and I know they did too. So we are in the final quarter of 2025, and what a year 2025 has already been. Well, I'll just leave it there. You probably, by the tone of my voice will understand how I'm feeling. But business leaders are already looking towards 2026. Marketing teams are planning. If they're on a calendar basis, they're already planning for 2026, or they should be planning for next year. And it's a good time, I thought, to kind of hear what you're thinking about. What do you think of this business landscape, the conditions that we're all facing, and specifically healthcare and life sciences companies? What are your thoughts?
Yes, Perry. In the healthcare and life science ecosystem, I think we're out of stall mode, which I felt we were in January through maybe April. And then people are like, well, we got to do something. Our businesses can't just grind to the halt. But we're dealing with this negative triad headwind of higher financing costs, quick technological change with AI, and uncertain policies and regulations, right? So that's keeping a little bit of a damper down on things. But at the same time, people are humming along. Spend is still good. And there's a lot of drugs in the pipeline and things can't just come to a halt. And I'm seeing healthcare systems spend again for the first time in a long time. I mean, radiology was dead. And then I was at a radiology show not too long ago. And the booths were humming and busy and people were getting orders again because things can't just grind to a complete halt. People continue to get sick. People continue to need therapies. Companies have to get their bottom line. So I'd call it cautious, very cautious optimism going into 26.
Well stated. I agree. I agree with you. I like how you said we kind of were all there was this wait and see. Yeah, and I think we're kind of seeing some movement now. I would agree with you. Yeah. So M&A activity is slowed down. Just general investment in the healthcare and life sciences space has slowed down. It's been much more competitive. And so I would you and do you think that's going to turn around and pick up? Your healthy optimism, your controlled optimism. Do you
Yeah,
think that will pick up then in 2026?
yeah, I think it will. Especially if we get the interest rate cuts. Right. So, financing costs will go down and M&A never completely died. I'd say it just went back to normal. We were in this like hype cycle, 22, 23 when I sold. It was like everything was flying off the shelves and mergers were happening all over the place. Then we kind of got back into like, okay, a normal baseline. I think everyone looks at that and says, oh, we're down. We're down off of a cycle of 2 or 3 years when it was just crazy hockey stick up. Now we see, a little bit more caution in those deals, but they haven't gone to zero. And in fact, I think the smart buyers out there are buying things at less multiples. So they see a chance to buy companies at a little bit lower multiples than when things were crazy. Although I will tell you, healthcare and life sciences is still very hot in the M&A space.
Yeah. Thank you for that historical look. That's good, reminding us that we are coming off of some really good years or busy years in terms of M&A. So we're just back to normal. So thank you. I like that practical view. So against that backdrop, as businesses, as complex solution providers in the healthcare and life sciences space are starting to look at 2026, good marketers are putting their plans together. Uh, what advice would there be anything? Should they look at doing anything differently, or more, or less of anything going into 2026?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that audit is not a dirty word. It's only a dirty word in taxes. It's not a dirty word in marketing. And in my book, Stop Starvation Marketing, I go through an entire chapter about how to audit your marketing department. And September, October, November, perfect times to do that. Often people wait until the last minute until their CFO wants a budget when they're running the marketing department, when they could be right now beginning of Q4, looking at auditing what happened in 24, what happened in 25 with a really discerning lens, right? I think it's easy to look at like, oh, just on the general surface, this campaign worked, this didn't. No, look at everything. Your people. Do you have the right people? Do you have the right skills? Which campaigns did work, which did not? Are you able to track attribution to lead generation well? And if not, is that something that you should be looking to fix really quickly going into 26? So I love audits. I really, really encourage all my clients and anyone I've ever worked with to take a backward look at things. And the reason I do that is because if you bring hard data to the C level, the CEO, CFO, and you show them, okay, we didn't knock it out of the park here, but we did in campaign B, they're going to place a lot more trust in you than you just asking for some number and wanting to sweep the failures under the rug, because marketing is hard and not everything succeeds. Not every campaign, not every PR campaign, not every lead gen campaign. But if you got a portion that succeeded and the portion that didn't, be able to show your management team why things happened the way they did and the data behind that, and then why you're going to ask for money to go in these areas that did work, you're much more liable to get the budget you want than if you just say, oh, I'm taking last year's budget and increasing it by 10%.
I've heard that last comment from so many people. It's like a copy and paste. How important is it to get somebody from outside your organization to do this audit, or at least to help support this audit?
It really depends on how comfortable you are inside your organization with doing it. If you've never done one before, there are agencies out there that can help you, or even external auditors that can help audit a marketing campaign plan and budget. And I'd really highly recommend that. I've done that in the past with folks when I was in agency life. And often you only need that agency or consultant the first year to see the patterns, see the process that they use, and then you can implement it year after year. It's just a backward look at things. So yeah, if you're comfortable with strategy and auditing as a VP of marketing, CMO, then I'd say go for it. If you've never done one, I'd say look towards an agency or consultant that could help you with the process the first time.
Yeah, good advice. You mentioned, understand what went well and understand what didn't work. That latter part, I don't hear as often. And it kind of leads us to the copy and paste, do everything. But it's important to understand what didn't work and do something about it, right?
Yeah, I think often marketing leaders don't want to show the negative, and I don't know why that is because like CFOs show negative and positive all the time, right? But marketing leaders like want to sweep the bad stuff under the rug. Whereas I think you say, this didn't work, and here's the reasons we think why. You often don't know exactly why, but why we think and what we're going to do so that we don't repeat it again next year. I think that mea culpa goes a long way to gaining trust. And you can say, okay, well, we're not going to put budget to that thing that didn't work before. Google ads didn't work for us, but LinkedIn ads worked great. So we're going to shift budgets around. You're much more likely to get the full budget you need when you're making a change that looks proactive based on historical data.
That's really smart. You can gain some credibility with your executive team and the CFO by saying no to things that didn't work previously.
Yeah, I think I think our society as a whole has lost the ability to be humble. And take I'm I'm making like a societal impact here, but like and say like, hey, I'm not a magician here. I'm the CMO. We're doing our best. Marketing is not a hard science. It's like I say, it's a bit of a finger paint mixed with data. it's it's creative and it's science, right? So if everyone knew the marketing formula 100%, every company would be successful because I think it's the number one indicator whether your company is successful or not is how your marketing performs. But we're not all sitting there with a crystal ball being able to do that. So I think the best you can do is look at things in the past and then admit where you failed and come up with a proactive plan and go forward in that. And if people don't like that within your leadership team, then you're not in the right place because, that's how what else would you do? Marketing is not as cut and dry as sales. Like sales, you either make your number or you don't. Marketing has all these shades of gray. Right? Where we're getting more data analytics focused and attribution focused in marketing, but it still has gray areas, fluffier areas, I'd call them. Measuring a PR campaign, yeah, we can get better than we did 10 years ago, but it's still not exactly where it needs to be. So that's what I would recommend is like, take the mea culpa, um,
Yeah.
admit it, go for it, but have a proactive plan of how you're going to change things for next year. Don't just do the same thing over and over again and expect different results.
Yeah. So the other thing you mentioned that caught my attention was attribution, being able to do that well. And a lot of companies kind of fumble with that. They kind of look at last touch because it's easy to measure. Buyers at that point have revealed themselves to sellers, but but really what the important part is first touch. If you want to understand what's working marketing wise, how does one do that?
Yeah, I think it depends on what platforms you're using, right? If you're on a sophisticated demand base with an attribution module as a larger company, that's right there for you. As a smaller company, you have to get a little bit more creative, but even the HubSpots of the world that a lot of smaller companies use are starting to get better and better attribution models. And I'm talking first touch all the way through because sometimes there's a mid touch or there's a first touch and then a stall and then comes the last touch, and that in this industry may be 24 months, right?
Mm.
From the first touch till when a deal
Yeah.
signs. I also think that sales marketing coordination is really important and sales being accountable to inputting extremely accurate data. When I ran a sales department, you did not get your commission unless your HubSpot record was fully complete. Um, and I think that's a step that often gets skipped because people are like, no, we don't want to demotivate our salespeople. We don't want them filling out the HubSpot or Salesforce forms. We want them selling, right? We want them talking to people. But that data today is so darn important that it's gold, right? It's almost as important as the sale of tracking, when you closed it, where did it come from? So getting accurate records out of the sales and marketing department is more important and the bigger problem I see today than the actual platforms, which have become quite robust in doing it.
Yeah. So, really good advice. Thank you for all of that. We talked about when a couple times. I said we're in the last quarter of the year. You got to be doing your planning now. You mentioned the audit. Get to that. You want to have enough data to audit, but also you want to get started with your planning. Is there an ideal time to begin? What would your or less than ideal time to begin planning?
Yeah, it depends on what fiscal year you're on, but let's say you're on a calendar year, fiscal year, at least 4 months ahead. If you're 2 months ahead of when your management team is going to be asking for that marketing plan and budget, you really got a boogie. But I actually love the summer, so that might be for more of 2026 into 27. But it tends to settle down, less trade shows for the marketing team. I love that, July, August period when it tends to be a little bit quieter usually to look at the audit and then do the planning September, October, along with the budgeting. I find if you're on a calendar year, that's a really nice cushion of time that you're not tearing your hair out at last minute budgeting.
Yeah. Good timeline. I like that summertime as well. I think you have less going on and you have a clearer mind to do some good thinking. So for everybody who hasn't started planning, get busy. So it's, I want to talk a little bit about the planning team, assembling the right people. I'm going to ask it a little differently. Instead of like, what kind of titles do you need to assemble? What kind of skill sets do you need on a good, robust marketing planning team?
Yeah, so in the marketing planning team, I love a strategist, of course, right? Someone who can see the whole landscape, someone who is tied into the C level, the board, if you have one, that understands the business objectives and can tie those back to marketing strategies. Often I see marketing departments decoupled from where the business actually wants to go, whether that's growth, whether that's an exit, whether that's a merger, whether that's a regulatory cycle. And marketing's just out there thinking we got to get leads. And that's not everything, right? So a strategist who's tied into business objectives, certainly a data analytics person or two, someone who can translate, your attribution models, any of your analytic packages, back into the data the strategists need in order to make those decisions. And very much UN translators, those people are, if they're good, right? They get the numbers, but some numbers in there are junk, like time on page. Who cares? Right? uh, Conversion rate. Yeah. Okay. I care about that. So someone who can look at all the data and funnel that down. Someone who really understands voice of customer. And that's not always within the marketing department, but sometimes the sales department or customer service. I really like someone who's like hearing it directly from the field, from end users or decision makers. A really good branding person, that creative brand understands the importance of brand, along with a content strategist or content person, whoever's handling content for you. And if the content and branding person are kind of tied together and aligned, I like them coming together first and then reporting to the team to see like, okay, what do we have as a full package there? A PR, analyst relations, if you have them, in there, and then your web marketing automation technology, folks too. I like everyone to have an input. You don't need the same level of participation in from all those people, but I think they should all at least be consulted, ask questions of, see what they need, see what they're seeing, and then the data analysts coming in with the numbers So that gets the left brain and the right brain. You got sort of the creatives, the branding on one side, and then you have the data, analytics, web, IT, techie stuff on there too. Bring those two together, you get a right and left hemisphere of the brain, and it's the best combination.
Brilliant. It's so refreshing to hear have the customer voice in the room. Somebody who's close to the customer, whoever that is, have them in the room, and it's like having the customer there who can kind of check everything that's going on. I eh, Data scientists, data analytics experts are kind of new. They've been around a little bit, but they're certainly getting more sophisticated, and data is becoming more sophisticated. And a lot of companies don't have them. I talked to somebody in a contract development and manufacturing organization recently, and for their planning cycle, they had data scientists who were drug data scientists helping with the drug development process, and they just re kind of pivoted them into marketing temporarily to help them with the planning. So, when I asked you about skills, these people could lie anywhere in your organization, but use them for this planning session.
Yeah, yeah. That's often harder for a language kind of, like I'm not going to go into the lab and speak their exact language on process. And the same with marketing. But if you can get data from anyone, it's better than nothing. But I like a data analytics person who knows marketing, who knows AI, who can dig that stuff for you, but understands the implications within a marketing realm than within, like, a product realm or a lab realm kinda thing. But any data is better than no data, coming from it. I'd say, the person who's leading the marketing department probably has a much harder job because he or she's having to do the translation of terminology in there because, like, if you have a good marketing data analytics, they know what you need. If you're using data scientists within the organization, you're gonna have to spoon feed what reports you need, what's really important, how to discern, the chaff from the gold within your data.
Yeah, great advice. I want to turn to something we spoke about in previously about the relationship between marketing and the CFO, the resources. How does one develop that? If you're the head of marketing, when do you begin developing that? I don't think you want to start building that relationship at the time you have a plan that needs resources. So, what is your advice in building a trusting relationship with the CFO, and when do you turn to them to get support for your plans on an annual basis?
You're absolutely right. If you're going to the CFO when you're only asking for money, that feels really gross, right? Right? It feels like I'm only going and asking when I need a favor, right? Versus developing the relationship like first week. Like if I was a chief marketing officer, like first week I'd be like, "Hey, let's go golf or go to lunch or, whatever." Like really get to know the CFO and understand their pains too, because they often have a very good pulse on where things are in the organization, what things are going well, what the exit plan is or the growth plan is, are we going public? Like you'll get a pulse on the business objectives, but you'll also understand where the pain points are. And when you get that 20% cut slash to budget, you can ask intelligent questions and have a relationship to ask those questions. And then when you're going for next year's budget, you have a congenial relationship in order to say, like, here's why I'm asking for this increase, or here's why we're switching from platform A to platform B, or here's why we need a new website. Like I often see like the worst arguments for like why you need a new website, and it's like, really put some thought into why you need to do this, why we need to strip things back to the bare bones. And there's often good reasons for doing that, like why we need an AI package right now, why we need a new marketing automation system. You can have a really congenial conversation now with someone who trusts you, who's had a relationship with you. When you weren't asking for something, you were trying to help them and understand their world which I mean, the CFO is a thankless job. Like many times they're stressed. The CEO's always on them. The board's on them, right? And there, so a little bit of love and cookie tray, over to the CFO in terms of getting to know them too, and say like, hey, I understand you see marketing as a cost center a lot of times. Here's really what marketing can do. Here's some data on leads we brought in or publicity we've gained for the organization that's helped valuation. Okay, now you usually have their attention.
Yeah. They speak differently than marketers do too. They have like a different lexicon. And so it's I don't think the CFO is going to move closer to the marketer in how they talk about, right?
No, but the great thing with like AI now is like go put balance sheet terms into understand what a balance sheet is, what a cash flow statement is. Like even if you're a marketer, like understand those things and ask to see them. When I was an engineer at Motorola, it's actually what encouraged me to go for my MBA because I was presenting to this Fortune 50 at the time board, and all these numbers would start flashing around, right? And I'm like, I'm an engineer in the lab running experiments for semiconductor, right? And I was like, I don't like that I don't understand all of this, right? And at that time, you had to go for an MBA class in accounting and finance to understand it. Today, you can throw this and throw your company's financials into Chat GBT if you can get your hands on them, and ask, what are these things? Why are they important? And how does my marketing budget fit into each one of these centers? Because often I see some wacky stuff of like trade shows being attributed fully to marketing when you're paying for all the salespeople to go. If you can go argue like your case well of like, okay, this should be marketing, this should be sales, this should be, customer service, you're also going to get a better marketing budget on that. So really understand how to read your company's financials, and ask to see them. As a CMO or VP of marketing, you should be able to see the company's financials.
Yeah, awesome advice. How soon, so in your planning process, do you go at the concept stage and go to the CFO and say, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking," or do you really get down to the details and because they're going to want to know that. So what is your advice? What has worked better?
A little bit more baked than the first stages. So do the audit. Get your first strategic plan. I like the goalpost model. So it's like a American football goalpost. Performance is the P, objectives is business objectives, strategies is the S, tactics is the T. So performance, objectives, strategies, tactics. Once you have objectives of the business, you can shoot the CFO an email and just like, these are the business objectives for 2026 and 27. Am I on target? Okay. Yes, no, great. Get feedback on that. That's all you have to ask. Like here's my bulleted list. Then go put your marketing strategies together and say, here are the strategic elements. Here's about roughly what we're going to need for each one of these strategies quarter by quarter. Show that to the CFO. And then the granular stuff can come later when he asks for the Excel spreadsheet, that lays out month by month. He or she asks for that. So I think that's a good strategy. It's kind of a phased approach, but it doesn't lay a lot on the CFO because they're super busy people, oftentimes. So business objectives, do I have them right? Yay, nay. Then strategies that you're thinking of to accomplish these business objectives, then get into the tactics and the budget and the final stage.
Excellent, excellent stuff. What else about planning? What other top of mind things would you maybe cautionary advice or do this, be careful of this?
I advise to first look at performance KPIs and make sure those KPIs are in alignment with the business objectives of the company. So if we get 100% on this, it's actually going to be impactful and meaningful, right? I would survey the company about competition and what could blindside us. Is anyone hearing of a drug being developed? Is anyone hearing of a medical device that's coming on the market? Anything that we should get? I mean, look at what happened with AI. That just like took everyone by surprise and was like a crazy slap across the face, I think, to some companies. Right now, we couldn't all predict that. We knew people were working on it, but we didn't know exactly when it was going to launch. And then it launched in such a fantastic way. But really say, like, what competitively could take us down? And that's not sometimes a direct competitor, but an indirect competitor or even like internal. So like within a health system, could they start developing this themselves and won't need us anymore? We see AI doing that in a lot of ways, right? Um, Pricing. Is your pricing correct? I think pricing is one of those things that marketing often gets not invited to the conversation around, which it's one of the 4 Ps of marketing, right, is price. But inserting yourself to say, like, do we have the right pricing model here for value, for our brand? And there are a lot of companies undercharge. And they just tie it to something and it never changes for a very long time. And now with tariffs and some other, regulatory uncertainty that's out there in the market, I think pricing something you have to be looking at very, very carefully to make sure that you're not going to get in the red on your bottom line on that. And then people. I'd look at people. Do you have the right skills, right people, right mindsets for the company that you are today and going into 26, 27, not the company you were when you hired them? And that's often hard if you've had, people within the organization a really long time. But companies evolve and change, and marketing department personnel have to evolve and change as well. You have to have the right skill sets and personalities at the right time.
Brilliant advice. And it doesn't surprise me in the least. Great, great tips. I want to ask you a little bit about what you're currently doing at the Whisper Group. You have a passion for helping women founders. What are some of the problems that you're helping them solve or opportunities that you're helping them achieve?
Yes, the Whisper Group is the number one exit advisory for female founded businesses in the world. And we go across verticals. I'm working in the healthcare and life sciences space. And we help those founders with like I have a 3 stage process. One is understanding when is the right time to sell. Are they ready to sell? What's their valuation currently? Often people have a very distorted view of how much their company is worth because it's their baby, right? And sometimes they have a distorted view to the low side and sometimes to the high side. But we do something called a Y gate, and that Y gate has multiple different factors, and we give you a score on 0 to 100 on how ready you are to sell. And that can be emotionally, that can be financially, that can be people wise. Who do you have in the bench behind you as the person who's selling? So we do that. And then some folks are ready to sell and they go right to our gate called a fly gate, in which we are helping them get acquired or merged with another company. And if they're not, they say, "Oh, I thought I was a $5 million business, but I'm only a $2 million business right now. I want to get to 5 to 10." Then we do what's called a growth stage, an apply gate, we call it. So we have fly, apply, and Y. And we do apply with them to help them grow and give them strategic advice every step along the way so they can get to their exit goal.
Awesome. I love that. Fly, why? Say that again.
Apply, and fly. And yes, Carrie Kirpin, who is the CEO of the Whisper Group, has a fabulous book called The Whisper Way, and it's has this methodology that she's developed, and we follow that in order to help female founders.
Excellent. I love what you're doing. How can our audience find you, get a hold of you, Chris?
I say right now, LinkedIn is the best way. I'm developing a branded website for myself, but in my transition here, LinkedIn, Chris, Chris Slocumb, Slocumb is the best way to find me. I answer all my LinkedIn, as Perry knows. And then the book, Stop Starvation Marketing, is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And I'm working on a book to be launched in 26 called Mastering the Exit Gauntlet for your audience who may be interested in how to go about exit the right way and not get burned because I learned a lot of hard lessons over 5 years in trying to sell a company.
Excellent. Chris, thank you so much for being with the Trailblazers. Just a tremendous amount of value that you bring to our audience. Love your insights and the common sense that you bring to this very complex world. My guest has been Christine Slocumb, author of Stop Starvation Marketing, new book coming out in 2026. Connect with her on LinkedIn, and I'm sure she'll tell you how to get that when it's published. So thank you very much, Chris, for being with us today.
Thank you, Perry. It's always a joy, and thanks for inviting me back.